So, a little girl saying she's the Firestarter, she can't be because
I'm a Firestarter, twisted Firestarter.
Hello and welcome to another video here at Movie Mash, and today we're going to talk about Firestarter, and not the Prodigy one, no, the Stephen King book. Now, let's get into it. But before I carry on, please hit the subscribe button just below. It really helps with the algorithm and it makes such a big deal to this channel. So it's just there, just do it. Nice one. So Firestarter is a Stephen King novel turned to movie. I think it was done back in 1984 and it's been remade today. And starring Zac Efron, Ryan Keira Thomas and Sidney Lemon. So, synopsis. A family is desperately trying to hide their daughter from a shady federal agency that want to harness her unpredictable gifts for turning fire into a weapon of mass destruction. So, I've never seen the original, and as much as I love Stephen King and I thought I'd seen them all, I come to realise I hadn't seen it, and I never really found much interest in it. I didn't know much about it. It wasn't a film that I commonly seen around. And I meant to get round to it, it just never held my interest. And the thing with this one is, knowing it was come out, I never seen the trailer, but because I review films, I suppose I had to. But I didn't have much interest in watching it, and you know what? It wasn't terrible. So let's just jump straight into the positives. Zac Efron, he was really good on this. I mean, like, he's actually a decent actor. I never really paid much attention to it. I don't think I've seen loads of stuff with him in. I see a couple of comedies with him in, and I never really paid him. But you know what? He's actually quite decent, and like to see him in actually more doing stuff like this. He was the father, and he played sometimes he was a bit of an arsehole, but in a good way, you know. I really felt for it. I believed he was the father. I believed in him. Now, the young girl, Ryan Keira Armstrong, she actually was a decent actress. She did really well. I actually believed her as well. Sometimes when you get kids on films and stuff like that, it can be annoying, and you can see they're memorizing a script or something. No, she was quite fluent. She flowed. I believed in her, and I thought she was really decent. So, and knowing this film was an hour and a half, it made me feel good, because I was like, you know what, I'm sick of all these films being too long when they don't have much story. So going into that, but that also was a negative. Now, as I say, like this, I really think this could have benefited from being like a few episodes on a Netflix series, because it felt like I was watching the first episode of a TV series that was going to continue. There was more to flesh out. It felt like there was more to be said, what happened to him in the beginning, in the middle, and all that, and it was all combined into a film. And don't get me wrong, it was still okay. Just felt like it would have probably benefited from being a TV series, but you know what, it is what it is. But I will say that the last half an hour, it really started getting interesting for me, and that's when I was really starting to enjoy it. Now, let's get into the negatives. Now, the colouring. It was there's a dull looking palette to the film, and I couldn't understand why, being Firestarter and you should have loads of bright orange colours, and it did at points, but it just felt like the colour palette was quite dull. I don't know, it just seemed to bother me. It felt like I was watching like an old film or something. I don't know, it just, that was a negative for me. Now, this is supposed to be a horror film, but I would say it was more like a superhero origin story, because it felt like X-Men. It actually felt like an X-Men film, because these were mutants on the run who had these special powers. And there was a couple of horror moments in it, and when they weren't bad, but I wanted more of that, and I think it would have been beneficial if we've seen some more grisly moments like that. And because it's an R-rated, I'm expecting that, you know, if they took out those two little elements of horror that they had, it probably could have been a 12 or a PG-13, but I don't understand why they would call this a horror and give it an R rating, but not give us as much gore as R-rated films can be. It could have done that, but it didn't. Now, as I said, it felt like, to be honest with you, the closest film I can think of probably would be Logan. You know, where they're hiding a young girl and they all got super mutant powers and agencies chasing them. I mean, it's not as good as Logan, but that's how it felt to me a little bit. A bit like Stranger Things, where there's a girl who the government agencies are after and all that. So I had all that. But in its defense, you can't say it was a new thing because Stephen King wrote that like in the early 80s. So he was the original one who wrote this. So, he's copying people who are copying him and they're copying back, back and forth. Who knows? Who cares? Now, Kirkwood Smith turns up, and for people who don't know, is Clarence from RoboCop, the bad guy. And he's an awesome actor, and he was awesome in that. And he turns up, and all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, he's in it. And he's in one scene. I'm like, why? And it felt, I suppose in a way it was like, maybe it was to help explain a bit of a backstory to him. Again, as I said, a TV show probably would have benefited from that, giving him a backstory. But he was on it for one scene, and they were like, right, we need you, we're going to get you, we need you back on the team and all that. And there's all that. And I'm like, yeah, never seen him again. And it felt like the positive of having him in it was also the negative, because you're waiting for him to turn up again at some point, but he doesn't. So that was a bit of a kick in the teeth. So I preferred he wasn't in it to expect him to be in it again. So it felt pointless. Gloria Rubin, she played the government official boss, you could say. And to me, her acting was awful. I mean, I haven't seen her before. I don't know what she's on before. I don't know all the things she's done. But on this, she was terrible. She overacted. She was trying to play a really horrible villain, like, some kind of 80s villain. And to be honest with you, it was too much. I was even laughing at it, and I was like, I should be worried and screaming at her about how bad she is. And I was like, you know what? It was just too much. So that's a definite negative, that I don't understand why they did that. Now, the cinematography wasn't all that. It was just all right. I mean, it wasn't terrible. I'm just saying it didn't stand out to me. It was just pretty much generic, if you ask me. So there's one more thing I wanted to say, and we should have said it in the positives, that the music and the score was pretty decent. Now, it was actually really good. And it turns out John Carpenter had something to do with it. And you know what? It sounded like he had something to do with it, because for people who are John Carpenter fans, he has this kind of a sound that is real recognizable. So yeah, that was definitely a positive, and I should have mentioned that earlier, and that's definitely worth listening to. So let me ask you, do you agree with me or do you not? Do you think this would have benefited from being a TV show or not? Did it feel like that you watched an hour of the beginning of a TV show and the last half an hour is the end of a TV show? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below, and like and subscribe as normal, because pressing that button there won't cost you nothing, but it really helps with the algorithm, and it ain't gonna hurt you to do it, so please do it. Now, I will talk to you later, but for now, and until next time,